Welcome to Justice Reloaded HD, where we bring you stories that may seem simple at first glance, but quietly touch the deepest parts of the heart. If you've ever believed that one small act of kindness can change a life, if you've ever been moved to tears by compassion showing up when it's least expected, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a moment of warmth, hope, and human connection. Today's story begins on a rainy afternoon in Seattle, where a single umbrella was opened not just to shield from the storm, but to offer shelter for the soul. It's the story of a powerful mother, a frightened little girl, and a waitress who turned a passing moment into a miracle. The rain hadn't stopped all afternoon. Heavy drops drummed steadily against the rooftops of Seattle, soaking the sidewalks and blurring the cityscape into watercolor shades of gray. Outside the small restaurant called Willow and Rain, strangers huddled beneath the awning, shaking umbrellas and pulling jackets tighter against their bodies. The scent of wet pavement mixed with the faint aroma of coffee and freshly baked bread wafting from inside. Among the people waiting in silence stood Catherine Monroe. Impeccably dressed in a tailored beige coat, her heels clicked softly against the wet ground as she guided her daughter Lily to a quieter corner away from the crowded entrance. Catherine was a woman who had built an empire in pharmaceuticals, whose name once filled headlines and medical journals alike. But ever since her husband's sudden passing, she had retreated from public view. Her days were now filled with boardroom silence and clinical efficiency, no warmth, no color, no softness. Just control. At least, that's what she thought she needed. But control was slipping through her fingers every time she looked at Lily. The 9-year-old girl clung to her mother's coat, trembling violently. Her small hands were pressed tightly over her ears, and her eyes darted around in panic. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance, and Lily let out a soft whimper. "She doesn't like the noise," Catherine said quietly to no one in particular, her voice as helpless as the child beside her. Most people turned away. Some glanced briefly with sympathy before shifting focus back to their phones, their meals, their umbrellas. Then came a voice, gentle, low, and steady. "Mornings like these feel like the sky is just trying to rock the earth to sleep." Catherine looked up. A woman had stepped out from the restaurant, not a patron, but a waitress. Her name tag read Jade. She held a large green umbrella, worn at the edges but sturdy, and she walked straight to Lily. Not rushing. Not hesitating. Just moving with a kind of calm that doesn't demand attention, yet pulls it like gravity. Without saying another word, Jade knelt beside Lily and gently tilted the umbrella to cover the girl and her mother. The world outside was still drenched, but under that canopy of canvas, something shifted. Jade smiled and whispered, "Rain can sound scary, but it can also sing, if you listen differently." Lily stopped shaking. Her fingers loosened from her ears, and she looked at the woman, not in fear but curiosity. For the first time in months, Catherine saw something she hadn't dared hope for: stillness. Peace. A flicker of trust. And in that fleeting soaked moment outside a corner café in Seattle, the billionaire mother realized something no doctor, no therapist, no medication had been able to show her. Her daughter didn't need to be fixed. She needed to be understood. And the woman with the worn green umbrella, the waitress no one had noticed, had seen it all along. Catherine stood beneath the awning, her designer coat soaked at the edges. Her heels were planted firmly on the concrete, but her heart was unraveling. Beside her, Lily clung tightly to her arm, her small frame shaking with every roll of thunder that echoed through the city. Raindrops pelted the sidewalk in steady rhythm, a sound that seemed to grow louder inside the child's head. Lily's fingers were pressed over her ears. Her eyes, wide and glossy, darted from the street to the sky and back again. She whimpered, her lips quivering. "Make it stop," she mouthed, but her voice never left her throat. Catherine knelt down, trying to soothe her, but the panic in her daughter's gaze only deepened. She whispered her name, rubbed her back, promised it would pass, but none of it reached Lily. None of it had for months. Not the specialists. Not the therapists. Not even the countless resources money could buy. And that's when she appeared. Jade Walker stepped out from the restaurant, holding a worn green umbrella. She wasn't in a rush. She wasn't startled by the sight of the distressed child. Her presence felt like warm tea on a cold morning, quiet, calming, and entirely unexpected. Without a word, Jade knelt beside them. She tilted the umbrella to shelter all three, then gently looked at Lily and said softly, "Rain is just the sky rocking the earth to sleep. It's not scary, sweetheart." Her voice was calm, steady, like a lullaby spoken instead of sung. Lily blinked. Her shoulders dropped, ever so slightly. Her hands slowly lowered from her ears. The tremble in her legs eased. For the first time in what felt like forever, Catherine saw her daughter breathe. Not shallow, panicked gulps, but real, slow breaths. Peaceful ones. Catherine looked at the stranger in awe. Who was this woman who could do in seconds what months of experts couldn't? She didn't have an answer, but somehow, she knew this moment would change everything. The next morning, Jade was back behind the counter at Willow and Rain, refilling coffee mugs and wiping down tables as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But the moment she stepped into the kitchen, wiping rain off her sleeves, one of the line cooks handed her a message. "There's a man outside asking for you. Says he's someone's driver." Jade raised an eyebrow, half suspecting it was a mistake. But when she walked out, she was met by a tall, sharply dressed man standing beside a sleek black town car, engine still running. "Miss Walker?" he asked. She nodded slowly, her hands instinctively tightening around the dish towel. "Mrs. Monroe would like a word with you. She hopes you'll come with me to her home. She says she has a proposal. One she thinks you'll understand." Jade hesitated. Her instincts were usually good, sharpened by years of heartbreak and self-reliance. But there was something in the man's tone. He wasn't pressuring her. He wasn't even trying to sound important. He sounded sincere. Within the hour, she found herself being driven through the iron gates of the Monroe estate, a sprawling property nestled among towering evergreens and thick fog. She stepped out onto a cobblestone driveway, her breath catching at the sheer size of it all. Inside, she was greeted not by assistants or security, but by Catherine Monroe herself. "I wanted to thank you," Catherine said simply, gesturing toward a quiet sunroom at the back of the house. Jade followed, unsure of what to say. It wasn't until they stepped inside that she saw it. On a small table by the window sat a drawing, clumsy, childlike, done in bright crayons. A green umbrella hovered over three stick figures. One of them had wild curls, just like Lily. And beneath it, in crooked letters that still managed to carry weight, were the words, "She held the rain away, with her heart." Jade stared at it for a long moment. Her throat tightened. Catherine, standing behind her, spoke softly. "Lily hasn't drawn anything in weeks. Not since the fear took over. But last night, she asked for her crayons. She said she wanted to draw the lady who made the rain less scary." Then gently, Catherine added, "I'd like to offer you a position. Nothing formal. No titles, no uniforms. Just be here. Be around. Especially when it rains." Jade turned to her slowly, eyes wide. "You want me to come here, when it rains?" Catherine nodded. "I've hired the best minds to help my daughter, Miss Walker. But yesterday, for the first time in months, Lily didn't run. She didn't cry. She listened. To you. And I don't know what that means exactly, but I know it means something." Jade looked back at the crayon drawing, then out the window to the garden beyond. The rain had started again, soft this time, like a lullaby on glass. She could have asked how much she'd be paid. She could have questioned motives or worried about what people might think. But she didn't. Because somewhere in that house, a little girl was learning that not all storms were meant to be feared, and Jade had helped her see that. She nodded quietly. "I'll come, not for the money or the title. Just for her." Rain used to send Lily running. The first rumble of thunder, the first patter of droplets on the window, and she would disappear beneath a table, curl into herself, and block out the world. Catherine had tried everything: soundproofing rooms, playing calming music, even using noise-canceling headphones. Nothing worked. Because Lily wasn't just afraid of sound, she was afraid of what the sound meant. Then Jade came back. She never announced herself with fanfare. She simply showed up when the clouds gathered, carrying the same green umbrella, wearing the same soft smile. But this time, she didn't just shelter Lily from the rain. She brought the rain inside, gently, playfully, like an old friend knocking on the door. The first thing she taught Lily was to listen. Not fearfully, not defensively, but curiously. One afternoon, Jade sat Lily down by the window and handed her a set of wooden spoons and mixing bowls. "Let's make music with the rain," she whispered. Lily hesitated at first, glancing toward her mother for reassurance. Catherine nodded, quietly stepping back. And slowly, tentatively, Lily began tapping in rhythm with the falling drops. Soft at first, then louder, then giggles. Pure, unfiltered laughter. Another day, Jade brought in paper cutouts shaped like raindrops. "These are your raindrops," she told Lily. "You get to decide what's inside them." They filled each drop with drawings: happy faces, sunshine, hearts, even little umbrellas. Then they glued them into a collage on the window, so the rain outside would meet the joy inside. But the moment that broke something open, the moment Catherine would remember for the rest of her life, came during what Jade called a rain house project. She gathered yards of clear plastic and LED lights that glowed soft blue. In the center of the Monroe living room, she and Lily built a tiny shelter, a dome that looked like glass but felt like air. When Lily stepped inside, lights danced across the surface like falling rain. No thunder. No harshness. Just shimmer and warmth. "This," Jade said as she knelt beside her, "is what rain feels like when you're not alone." Lily didn't speak. She just reached out and touched the walls. Then she sat down cross-legged and whispered, "It's pretty." The next time it rained for real, Lily didn't run. She didn't flinch or cry or dive beneath furniture. Instead, she pulled a chair to the window and took out her crayons. Jade sat beside her, and the two began to draw: windows, puddles, raindrops, even frogs hopping on wet stones. And when thunder rumbled in the distance, Lily glanced up and smiled. "It's just the sky's big drum," she said. "It's part of the music." Catherine stood in the doorway, silent, her hand pressed over her heart. She had spent years building a life that controlled everything: outcomes, variables, expectations. But this was something else entirely. This was trust. This was healing. And all of it began with rain. Catherine stood quietly in the hallway, watching through the open doorway as Jade and Lily sat side by side on the floor. Outside, rain tapped gently against the tall windows, forming small rivers on the glass. Inside, there were colored pencils scattered across the carpet, paper raindrops taped to the walls, and the soft murmur of laughter, real warm laughter, from a little girl who once trembled at the sound of a storm. It was a scene no therapist had ever been able to create. For weeks now, Catherine had observed the changes. Not just in Lily, but in herself. She had always believed that healing came from credentials, that solutions were hidden in degrees and research papers. She had spared no expense, consulted the best minds, brought in experts from across the country. And still, her daughter had remained frozen, until Jade. She wasn't trained. She had no formal qualifications. But she saw Lily. Not as a patient. Not as a problem. But as a child who needed one simple thing: to be understood. Catherine exhaled slowly, the weight of years pressing gently against her chest. "I had all the specialists," she whispered to herself. "But I never thought my daughter just needed someone who understood what rain meant to her. Not what it meant in theory, but what it felt like in her bones." It was supposed to be a quiet morning. The rain had returned, not a storm, just a soft drizzle that wrapped the Monroe estate in a hush. In the garden, beneath the same green umbrella, Jade stood with Lily, who clung to her side, giggling as she pointed out the shapes the rain made on the patio stones. Catherine watched from the kitchen window, a mug of tea in her hands, her heart feeling full in a way she hadn't known in years. But the peace didn't last. That afternoon, Catherine's phone buzzed repeatedly. At first, she ignored it. But when her assistant burst into the room, pale and anxious, holding a tablet, Catherine knew something was wrong. "You need to see this," she said. The headline glared across the screen in bold, mocking letters. Pharma Queen hires Waitress as daughter's therapist? Emotional manipulation or PR stunt? Beneath it was a blurry photo, clearly taken with a phone camera, of Lily wrapped in Jade's arms under the umbrella, both of them smiling. The article accused Catherine of using a sob story to soften her public image, suggesting Jade had been hired not to help Lily, but to humanize her brand. The worst part wasn't the article. It was the comments. Thousands of them. Ruthless. Cruel. How convenient, a billionaire suddenly discovers compassion. Next thing you know, she'll bottle this rain therapy and sell it. Nice acting. Too bad the kid's being used for sympathy. Catherine felt her stomach twist. She had lived through media storms before, after her husband's death, during boardroom scandals, but this was different. This involved Lily. Her daughter. Her heart. And worse, the seed of doubt had been planted. What if Jade was using them? What if this entire connection, this peace Lily had found, wasn't built on kindness, but on opportunity? Later that night, Catherine sat alone in her study, scrolling through the photos again. The umbrella. The hug. The smile. She remembered thinking how natural it had looked, and now she wasn't sure if that was a comfort or a warning. She picked up the phone. "Tell Miss Walker she won't be needed for the time being," she said quietly. "We need space. No accusations. No confrontation. Just silence." The next morning, Jade didn't come. She didn't call. Didn't knock on the gate. But when Catherine passed by the foyer, she noticed something leaning against the door, the green umbrella. Tied to its handle was a small piece of paper, folded neatly. Catherine opened it with trembling hands. The handwriting was simple, almost childlike. "I didn't teach Lily to stop being afraid of rain. I just stayed beside her, while she found the courage herself." There was no signature. No explanation. Just truth, raw and quiet. Catherine held the note for a long time, her eyes wet not from the rain, but from the ache of not knowing whether she had just pushed away the very person her daughter needed most. Jade didn't argue. She didn't demand answers or try to explain herself. She didn't chase after Catherine or ask for a second chance. That wasn't her way. She had always known her place in Lily's world was never permanent, just a passing presence, like sunlight after a storm. So she left quietly. Before sunrise, she walked up to the Monroe estate one last time. The air was heavy with dew, and the sky was still painted in soft shades of gray. She placed the green umbrella gently against the front door, the same umbrella that had once turned a terrified child's afternoon into a moment of calm. Attached to the handle was a single note. No envelope. No flourish. Just a plain piece of paper, folded once, the edges still damp from her fingertips. Catherine found it hours later. The handwriting was simple, honest, and it read, "I didn't teach Lily to stop being afraid of the rain. I just stayed beside her while she found the courage to step into it. No accusations. No guilt. Just a quiet truth from someone who had given more than she ever asked in return." Catherine stood there for a long time, the umbrella in one hand, the note in the other, rain starting to fall once again outside the tall windows behind her. For the first time, it didn't feel cold. Days passed. The rain came and went, as it always did in Seattle, but this time, it brought no laughter. No music. No crayon-colored raindrops taped to the windows. Just silence. Lily had grown quieter again. Not in the way she used to, there were no tears, no panic attacks, but in the way someone looks around for something that used to be there, and finds only empty space. She didn't ask about Jade. But she didn't hum when it rained anymore, either. Catherine watched it all unfold with a sinking heart. Then the truth arrived in the most unexpected form, a call from her head of security. "We've reviewed the footage, ma'am," he said. "The person who leaked the photo, it was Everett. One of the former groundskeepers you let go last month. Apparently, he still had access to the camera system." Catherine's blood ran cold. Everett, bitter, resentful, and angry after being dismissed for misconduct. He'd always grumbled about how outsiders didn't belong on the property. And now, he had taken something precious and twisted it into scandal. She felt sick. But guilt weighed heavier than anger. Catherine walked into Lily's room that afternoon, hoping to find a distraction in her daughter's quiet world. That's when she saw it, a new drawing taped to the inside of Lily's closet door. It was simple, just like the others, stick figures under a wide green umbrella. This time, Lily had drawn herself not hiding from the rain, but standing in it. Her tiny arms were stretched out like she was catching raindrops. And beside her, the figure with curls, unmistakably Jade, stood holding the umbrella, not over her head, but between them. At the bottom, in blocky misspelled handwriting, were the words, "I want to walk in the rain, but not alone." Catherine stared at it for a long time. Her hand moved slowly to her mouth, and something in her chest cracked open. She had spent years, trying to fix her daughter. Endless appointments. Countless diagnoses. Always focused on what was wrong with Lily. But this drawing didn't come from fear. It came from hope. From trust. Lily didn't need another therapist. She didn't need a miracle cure. She just needed someone who wouldn't run when the storm came. And Jade. Jade had been that person. Not because of credentials, or treatment plans, or impressive degrees. But because when the rain started to fall, she stayed. Catherine closed her eyes, pressing the drawing gently against her chest. There were no words to take back what she'd done, no statement that could undo the silence she had given in return for loyalty. But there was still time. And maybe, just maybe, one last chance to make it right. The sky was overcast again, thick clouds rolling low, teasing another bout of rain. Catherine Monroe stood outside a modest apartment building on the quieter side of town, her driver waiting at the curb. In her hands, she held a familiar green umbrella, slightly frayed at the edges, the handle worn smooth from use. She clutched it as if it were something sacred. The door opened before she had a chance to knock. Jade stood there, surprised but not startled. Her eyes, soft and searching, flicked to the umbrella and then back to Catherine's face. Neither woman spoke at first. There was too much in the silence, apologies unspoken, pain shared, trust fractured, and something else still flickering in the space between them. Catherine took a breath, then held out the umbrella. "I came to return this," she said gently. "But more than that. I came to say thank you." Jade remained still, uncertain. Catherine's voice cracked just slightly as she continued. "I've spent Lily's life trying to protect her. I thought shielding her from every fear was how I could be a good mother. But I never realized. I was only keeping her dry. I never showed her how to stand in the storm." She looked down, her fingers tightening around the umbrella's handle. "You did that. Not with rules. Not with therapy. Just with kindness, and a gentle kind of bravery I don't think I've ever known." Jade's expression softened. She took the umbrella from Catherine's hands, not as a possession returned, but as a moment accepted. "She missed you," Catherine added quietly. "And I did too. More than I thought possible." A pause. Then a small smile formed at the corner of Jade's mouth. "I wasn't sure if I'd hear that." "Well," Catherine said, her voice steadying, "I hope you're ready to hear something else." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, its cover labeled, Brave Under Rain. "I want to start something," she explained. "With you. A program to help kids like Lily, kids who are afraid of thunder, of change, of being misunderstood. I want them to know the rain doesn't have to be feared. That sometimes it can be beautiful." Jade flipped through the folder slowly, sketches of sensory-friendly spaces, curriculum ideas for gentle exposure through play, art therapy models inspired by what she'd done with Lily. And at the center of it all was a single quote. "Let's not chase the storm away. Let's teach them how to dance in it." When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "You're serious?" Catherine nodded. "I have the resources. But you have the heart." And so they began. In the weeks that followed, Brave Under Rain was launched, not as a publicity stunt, not as some philanthropic branding move, but as a labor of love. A partnership born not from wealth or status, but from a little girl's courage and the woman who had stood beside her when the clouds rolled in. And on the day of their first community event, as dozens of children played beneath a canopy of gentle mist and shimmering lights, Lily handed a small umbrella to a nervous little boy. "Wanna walk in the rain with me?" she said, smiling. "We don't have to be scared. I brought this." If this story reminded you that even a small act of kindness can shelter someone from the biggest storm in their heart, then we hope it stayed with you, long after the rain stopped. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from grand gestures or perfect plans. Sometimes it begins with someone simply staying, when everyone else walks away. If this touched your heart, please give this video a like. And if you believe in stories that heal, uplift, and restore faith in humanity, don't forget to subscribe to Justice Reloaded HD. We'll be right here each week, rain or shine. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.